All right, today we have a class for the skeptics, and I'm super excited because I know Dr. Doug Currington and myself were both skeptics. And so I want to give a little bit of background to our guest speaker. Doug has a PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology, a master's in physics, concentration in materials science, and a bachelor's in physics with a minor in electrical engineering. He likes bits and bytes and data, right? He started out in his career working with NASA on a series of microgravity research studies that flew aboard the Space Shuttle, as well as the Department of Energy doing research on new advanced materials. He then switched into the life sciences and launched a biotechnology company that developed novel molecular biology tools to help large pharmaceutical companies to discover new drugs faster and more accurately. He's also an avid inventor, has won over 30 different awards and licenses for his innovations that span from biotech to nanoscience to medicine to energy technologies. After witnessing the incredible benefits of essential oils being used on his family, Doug had to readapt his entire westernized school of thought to understand the science underlying essential oils. Through his studies, he realized that there is a theory gap between Western medicine and natural medicine, and so he developed a model to connect these two disparate worlds. He now uses this model to teach in-depth online video classes that walk a person with no background in science through the basics of biochemistry, molecular biology, and how they relate ultimately to the science of essential oils. Doug lives in North Carolina with his 4 wonderful children and his wife, Amy. He has a son who is basically a clone of himself and 3 daughters. Do you have any commentary before I start digging into questions for you, Doug?
Yeah, it would probably be helpful for me. You kind of alluded to this in the introduction there, that I started out as a skeptic myself. My wife was the first one who really got on board with essential oils, Amy. I came out of westernized medicine. I was working in pharmaceutical research at the time, um, in the Western approach to monomolecular therapy, which I can go over a little bit about what the difference between monomolecular and polymolecular therapy is. But the Western approach really boils down to monomolecular therapy, which is use of one molecule, purified molecule, to try to treat an illness. Polymolecular therapy, you're dealing with multiple molecules working in synergy or concert together as a team to treat an issue in your body. But the whole westernized school of medicine is all built around the monomolecular approach, and that's what you're taught. Pharmacy school, if you're an MD, if you're a PhD biochemist, it's all around monomolecular therapy. So you think that's the only world that really exists, or is that's credible? And so when my wife,
just 1 second, just to explain that a little further for like the normie, the regular person, is that you cannot patent nature by law. So the medical companies, the pharmaceutical companies, they figure out what the healing properties are on a plant, and then they make a synthetic copy of a constituent in a plant and make a medicine out of it that they can patent. And that's why it's monomolecule. It's one molecule of that plant versus using that beautiful synergy that God gives us, nature gives us, for all the healing properties of the plant. Sorry, please go, Doug.
oh yeah, good point. So and I could touch on that point as well. So my story is that, I was a skeptic. My wife was using them. I actually bought her the first premium starter kit, not because I was thinking they would be useful for health, but because I wanted to get rid of all of the artificially scented candles that were in our home that my wife liked to use, and gave me migraine headaches, and I just couldn't stand the artificial smells. And so somebody had told me that, hey, if you use these essential oils, she could diffuse these around the house. There's hundreds of different blends and things you can use and get different scents, and you probably wouldn't have headaches from the natural scents. So I got her that. I think it was her birthday. I bought her the kit, and then she started using them for that. We got rid of all the candles. All my headaches went away. And then she started to explore them on our children and our family for different health things. And this is where my eyes started to really open, because there were several health challenges that my children were experiencing that Western medicine couldn't deal with. And for our two children, our two girls, and Amy was able to successfully get those issues under control using essential oils. And then I had a medical issue come up that she was able to deal with essential oils with, that I was like, wow, Western medicine would have never been able to achieve what I just saw with my own eyes. So this is where I started to become less skeptical, and I started to do a deep dive into the research on essential oils, what's been published, who's doing research around the world, what scientists, what research institutions, what universities, downloading all of their articles that have been published in peer review articles, and understanding the molecular biology, what's really occurring. And then I said, wow, this is really great information, but it's not easily understood by the everyday public. So I started to develop classes, digital classes, videos, slides, to help people understand, write books that help people understand how essential oils actually work at a level that anyone can understand. You don't have to have a science background, but basically I explain how they work. So I actually have a book called How Do Essential Oils Work? You can't, it's too blurry. But yeah, so I have a book called How Do Essential Oils Work, and it explains step by step how they work in the body. Going back to your point with monomolecular versus polymolecular therapy and what the drug companies do. So yes, you're right. They can really only patent one molecule, and that's because of the cost of doing the research. The average cost to do bring a molecule through all phase 1, 2, 3 clinical trials and get it to market is $800 million of research that needs to be done to get one drug out there. It takes 13 years on average. The patent only lasts 20 years. So by the time they get the drug out to market, they only have 7 years left on the patent. So those 7 years, they have a monopoly on the industry on that one drug. That they have to make back that $800 million in 7 years and then make a profit. So this is why they want blockbuster drugs that make billions of dollars per year to be able to substantiate the amount of research that goes into these. Now, one of the things that most people don't know, and that they don't even teach students that are going through the Western approach, they don't really bring these things to their attention at all, that most of the drugs that we have in our drug cabinet are derived or inspired by molecules that are directly found in nature, in plants and other organisms. A big study was done by Dr. Newman, who is part of the National Institute of Health and the National Cancer Institute. He published many papers on this topic, and he did a review of 1,186 different drugs that were approved by the FDA over a period of 25 years. So 1,186 drugs. And out of those 1,186 drugs, 52% of them were copied from a molecule found in a plant or in nature somewhere. And so, and the reason behind that is because plants, the way they synthesize molecules, they can produce molecules that are substantially more innovative in their structure and their features than man can make in a laboratory synthetically. In fact, there's 40% of the chemical scaffolds that are found in plant molecules can't be replicated in the lab at all. And so researchers frequently go to nature to find new innovative sources of molecules, because plants have enzymes in them that synthesize these molecules and produce a glorious repertoire of thousands upon thousands of different molecules, all with different shapes and sizes. And these are found as well in essential oils. So essential oils are part of this network of molecules that plants make. And that's why they're so innovative in their structure, that many of them can fit into the tiny spaces that our proteins in our cells require to form an interaction with the protein and then modulate the function of the protein. So think of these molecules in essential oils as very small. They're about 0.8 nanometers in size, which is 50,000 times smaller than a cell. So they're very small, and they have different shapes and sizes to them. There's a very diverse array of structures there in essential oils, not just one molecule, right? So each essential oil itself is a blend of 200 to 300 different constituents, which are different molecules, right? And so no one essential oil is the same as another. And even after you grow it and you harvest it, you distill it, um, the composition of those 200 to 300 can change from batch to batch, or from where you grow it, or how much rain there was, or what conditions you use to distill it. So there's a lot of art to it, but also a lot of science. I'll
Amazing.
stop there and let you start answering.
No, that
Asking
was a great
specific
intro.
questions.
I think it's super important that people understand that. So these are questions that we have compiled, and they come from all different people that have asked questions over the years. So I'm just going to kick it off. First one is, how can one tiny drop of essential oil affect my whole body?
Okay, so if you look at a drop of essential oil, it's about it's about 50 milligrams, okay, in one drop. So if you look at the average molecular weight of an individual constituent in that drop, it's around 200, what they call atomic mass units. So if you do the math and you calculate how many individual molecules of constituents are in that one drop, it ends up being about 1 times 10 to the 20th. So 1 with 20 zeros after it, which is 100 million trillion. Yeah. So 100 million trillion molecules of essential oil constituents in that one drop. Now, in your body, there's about 30 trillion cells, which sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot to 100 million trillion, right? So there's actually, if you do the math, you find out in that one drop, there's enough essential oil molecules that every cell in your body can get 5 million of them. If the essential oils were able to travel throughout your body and reach all of those cells, you would have enough so that each cell could get 5 million of those constituents per cell. And so then the next question becomes, well, can the essential oils get to every cell in your body? And the answer is sort of. Okay, so once you apply an essential oil to your body, either topically, or you inhale it, or you ingest it, those are 3 different routes of entry to your body. Each one has differences associated with it. But once the molecules enter into your bloodstream, they will travel throughout your body, and they will be able to permeate through the different tissues and cells in your body, mainly because of 2 features. One, they're small. They're, like I said earlier, they're 0.8 nanometers in size, so very small. They're about the same size as an amino acid. So proteins are made out of amino acids, or strings of amino acids. So an essential oil constituent is about the size of one amino acid. So again, much, tens of thousands of times smaller than a cell. And so those molecules can get to the cells or through tissues, permeate through. The second feature is that the molecules are called lipophilic, meaning they like to interact with lipids. So, oil and water don't mix, right? So oil doesn't like water, water doesn't like oil. So think of essential oils more like oil. It's not as oily as an oil you would normally think of, like, say, motor oil or coconut oil or something like that, but it's somewhere in between water and oil, more on the oil side. So what that means is that the essential oil molecules like to interact with oily substances, lipophilic substances, because likes like. So it could be fat. So think about all of the tissues of your body. They all have a fat layer. So you have adipose tissue. Essential oil molecules can basically diffuse and permeate into fat tissue very easily, and then get in between your skin cells through the keratinocytes. There's ceramides around your keratinocytes. Ceramides are a lipid that surround all your skin cells. So the essential oil molecules could basically migrate through those ceramides in your skin cells. They can permeate through cell membranes. So the actual cell itself is surrounded by a lipid fat membrane, a phospholipid layer, bilayer. So that's a lipid cell membrane that the essential oil molecules can basically go right through. There's only really, for a molecule to get inside your cell, there's only two ways that can happen. One, there has to be a specific channel in the membrane of the cell, an opening that allows that molecule through, a gateway. So like glucose, sugar gets into your cells through a glucose transporter, which is a basically a channel in your cell that allows glucose through. Glucose just can't go through the membrane anywhere it wants. It has to find one of those channels, and that channel has to open and allow the glucose through. So it's a controlled process. The other way to get inside the cell, if it's not through a channel, is just to go right through the lipid membrane itself. And the only substances that can do that have to be small and lipophilic, which is what essential oil molecules are. So essential oil molecules can actually travel through the plasma membrane of your cell. Once they get in your cell, if you look at what's inside your cell, you have different organelles. You have the mitochondria, you have the Golgi, you have the endoplasmic reticulum, you have the cell nucleus. All of those organelles are also surrounded by lipid membranes. So the essential oil molecules can travel anywhere inside the cell and get into the nucleus of the cell as well. So yes, there's been studies on the pharmacokinetics of essential oil constituents and how they travel throughout your body. So there's enough molecules there to reach all the cells, to get to all the cells and provide like 5 million, like I said earlier, in one drop. But the tissues that are going to get the essential oils are basically ones that have blood flow to them, right? And it even cross the blood-brain barrier. So we know essential oil molecules can cross the blood-brain barrier and get into your brain as well. So will it go to every cell in your body? Nobody knows. Nobody's ever done that study. You can't even actually do that study. It's impossible to test that. But theoretically, I would say it's going to a lot of the different cells in your body.
Amazing. And by the way, we do know that there are oils that help with blood flow. So even improving blood flow is something that oils can do, which is really amazing on top of that. Okay, so next question. I've tried essential oils, but they didn't work. What do you say to that?
All right, so I guess the first question I would want to know is, which essential oils did you try? I would want to know what brand, and I would want to know what were you trying to use the oil for, and what are your symptoms, what are your conditions, what are you trying to achieve, and then I would ask, okay, how much did you use? I would ask, did you dilute it? How did you use it? Did you use it topically? Did you inhale it? Did you ingest it? Those are some other questions I would ask. I would then ask, how long did you use it for? I would ask, did you blend it with other oils or did you just use it by itself? How long did you use it? And then did you, before you gave up and said it doesn't work? So there's a lot of questions there. That's a big question. So let's say I got to the bottom of all that and I was still like, okay, that should be working. It's not working. Don't understand what's going on. So then the next thing I would look at is the level of the oil, how much you're using. And so there's this common misconception that if something is good, more of it is better. And so people tend to think of essential oils like fruit juice. Hey, I'm drinking my fruit juice today. Or it's more accurate to think of essential oils like a drug, okay? Not less like something you would consume like a nutrient. Essential oils are not being used by your body metabolically to add to the tissues of your body like food is. They're not vitamins. They're not being processed by your cells to be incorporated into the tissues of your body. Your body is going to get rid of those molecules through your liver and through your kidneys. So when you apply or ingest the oils, your body goes into a process where it starts to chemically modify those essential oil molecules to excrete them out of your body, to make them more water soluble so you can pee them out. And that's happening in your liver mostly. And so your body's trying to rid it. It's not something, these molecules are not going into your body like vitamin A or vitamin D or like sugar or something like this. These molecules are being processed by your body like your body would see a drug compound. And so, so think of it like a drug. So what does that mean? So with all drugs, okay, there's a bioactivity profile that looks like, well, if it has a good effect in your body, there'll be a, as you increase the concentration, the bioactivity profile will go in the good direction. And then as you increase the concentration, it'll come back down. And if you go too high, it can even then go negative. So there's an optimal concentration where you get the effect. And if you go too high, then the effect disappears. And this has been shown in the literature. Like, for example, if you look at carine, which is a constituent found in essential oils, if they've done studies on that, and if you use small amounts of it, it can cause your osteoblasts, which are your bone cells, to increase it, biomineralized calcium and become, to fight the effects of degradation of bone over time. So you can actually have bone tissue build up by using small amounts of carine, delta carine. But in their studies, they found that if they went too high in concentration, the effect disappeared. Okay, and so this is seen a lot of times with essential oil constituents. And so it could be that you're just using too much of it. So I tell people to start out low, so dilute it. So good practice is dilute your essential oils in a carrier, like fractionated coconut oil or some other oil. Young Living has one called V6, which is a blend of different oils. It's sort of a synergistic combination of oils you can dilute into, and try greater dilution. So if you're using the oil straight, then go to a 1 to 10 dilution, go to a 1 to 20, go to a 1 to 50. So, for example, one study I looked at, they diluted the oil 1 to 50 with it was geranium and lavender, diluted 1 to 50 in jojoba oil, and they did a study on people over several weeks, and they found that their all the indicators of stress in their body had come down. So basically, cortisol levels had gone down, and then other biomarkers in their body that measure stress, they had all come down. But this was a very small dilution of the oil that was being used compared to placebo. So that's another area I would look at, is looking at the concentration. Another would be blends of oils. It's important to realize that everybody's body's different. We're different genetically. So if you look at the DNA in my body and compare it to your body, there's about 24 million letters in the genetic DNA alphabet are different between my DNA and your DNA. So everybody's DNA differs by about 0.8% in terms of the letters in the genetic code. And so those differences manifest themselves as differences in the proteins that your cells make. And so the essential oil molecules are interacting with those proteins, and your proteins are a little bit different than mine on small sections of the protein based on those mutations in the DNA. So everybody's differently genetically, and so what may work for me may not work for you to try another oil. The other thing is your physiological condition. Everybody has a different physiological status in terms of how much fat they have in their body, how many nutrients they have in their body. Are they vitamin deficient? So those are other factors that can play in whether the oil is working or not. Another factor is when you think about a symptom, like, oh, my knee's hurting. Oh, I'm getting migraine headaches. Oh, I have high blood pressure. Oh, whatever it is, right? Those are just symptoms. All right, they're not the cause of what's going on. So any one symptom can have multiple causes that cause the symptom. So if I'm allergic to something, there could be, my immune system, the defect in my immune system could be one of 1,000 different things that's causing me to be allergic to this one thing that most people aren't allergic to. Why am I allergic to it and somebody else isn't? Well, could be many different causes of that, going all the way back to genetics, to your physiological status, what's happening inside the cells of your body. So if every symptom has multiple causes, and this cause is causing my symptom, but on your body, this cause is causing the symptom, then this oil is going to work for me, and then this oil is going to work for you. So if somebody says, oh, when I had this issue, I used this oil and it worked for me, and then that gets in somebody's book and then or a reference guide, and then people use that reference guide and they read it and they go, oh, this oil should work for this condition. Well, that worked for some people, but not all people. You have to find what combination of oils is going to work for you, because the cause of your symptom could be completely different than someone else's. So those are the kind of things. It's a complex answer. It's not,
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer, Doug. And I think I see that a lot with people is that, and this is what we like to teach about all the time, is you can't just slap an oil on something to fix the root cause of it, right? We sometimes have to do a little bit more thinking, but sometimes it's really enlightening. Like if someone has a headache, for instance, there could be 10 different triggers for a headache. And if you start using oils and you're like, huh, that digestive oil just worked for my headache, maybe it's what I'm eating that's causing the headache, not stress or congestion or whatever things can cause a headache. So I love that. Your answer. It's a complex question, a simple question that is very complex. Okay, so the next question is, why go back to essential oils? Because they would have been used for thousands of years, right? Why go back to essential oils when people's life expectancy is much longer since the emergence of Western medicine?
Why go back to essential oils when Western medicine? Okay, so life expect. Okay, I see what they're trying to get at. So, well, life expectancy has increased for lots of different reasons. One is, if you go back to the 1800s or the 1700s, we didn't have the sanitation systems that we have in place now, right? So the sanitation, a lot of the diseases that were caused were just by poor sanitation, have had to deal with sewage, had to deal with get clean water, all of those things. So we've improved that drastically. That's caused life expectancy to go up. Another issue is, birth. A lot of children died at birth or soon after birth. We don't have those problems now with modern medicine and hospitalization. We can, have pretty high success rate in births. So when you have a birth and they die at an early age, that really brings down the life expectancy number as well, to a large degree. And so then the other thing is that we have nutrients. People are getting vitamin C; they're not getting scurvy. All of the vitamins and nutrients that people mostly need, because it's been fortified into our food system, but people don't have the vitamin deficiencies, like nutrient deficiency, like they used to. And so all of those things have caused life expectancy to go up, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're living healthy lives. If you look at the Western lifestyle, the United States in particular, if you compare us to other countries, we're the worst for diabetes. We're the worst for cancer. We're the worst for hormonal problems in our body. There's so many issues in the Western lifestyle and health conditions that we have. We're living longer, but a lot of us are living miserable lives as we get into older age-related disorders, Alzheimer's, autism, all of these things that are creeping up in our society and increasing at a frequent rate is something that we all need to look at. And so it's not just living longer. How do I live a longer, healthier life? How do I have a healthy life while I'm living longer? Nobody wants to live a long, miserable life. So, so essential oils can help with that. Now, essential oils, true. Essential oils have been used for thousands of years. So they go all the way back to to the ancient scriptures of China and India, plant extracts and herbs being used to heal people. And it's all in their ancient texts, and it even continues to modern day. They don't see it as some snake oil thing like most Western people think of. If you go over to China, they actually use essential oils as part of their pharmaceutical prescription. So medical doctors will prescribe essential oils in China. Medical doctors will prescribe essential oils in India. Medical doctors will prescribe essential oils in Germany, in France. Why? Because it's all part of what they call their pharmacopoeia. The pharmacopoeia is that big book that for a country that they go to where the medical doctors can say, oh, here's the drugs I can prescribe for different things. It's like their Bible, right? So China has essential oils in their pharmacopoeia. India has it. Germany has it. France has it. The European Union, I believe, has it. Who doesn't have it? The United States. The United States does not prescribe essential oils as a medicine. But there's been clinical studies done on essential oils. If you go to PubMed and type in essential oil, then over on the left, if you click a little box that says clinical studies, you'll find there's about 1,000 clinical studies. A lot of them are randomized control studies, with placebo-controlled, double-blind, random control studies, like the type you would do with a drug. And so the problem is there's just not as much money out there driving the research to pay for the research, because all of the money from the big pharmaceutical companies is going into the research of new drug compounds, the monomolecular approach. So where you find most of the research going on in essential oil science is coming out of countries like China and India and even Africa, and then a lot of the countries in Europe. And in France, these pioneers in France in the 1800s and the early 1900s, they're the ones that really took out of the floral industry for perfumes and started to develop the whole essential oil commercialization of and use of essential oils for medical came out of France and over the last century and a half. And so Gary Young trained under a lot of the French masters that mastered this, distilling the essential oils. And so it's essential oils are basically considered medicine in most of the world, but in the United States they're not. And so we have a perception issue here. We have a bias. We think of snake oil or whatever we want to word we want to come up with. We don't think it's real science. We don't think it's real medicine, but it really is. And like I said earlier, most of the drugs that they're spitting out from big pharma is coming from plants.
Yep, the drugs are the ones that are the copies of the real medicine, right?
Yeah. In my book, I go over that and how do essential oils work. I compare Western medicine and essential oil medicine and how they compare and why they're different. The biggest difference really comes down to synergy, because when you think about monomolecular therapy, you're dealing with one compound and it can only do so much. And so remember I was saying earlier about if you have a symptom, there could be 100 different causes of that symptom, right? Different root causes. And so if you're a pharmaceutical company and you can only make one molecule, it's going to cost you $800 million. You have 13 years to do it. What are you going to do? Are you going to try to fix the root causes, or are you going to try to fix the symptom? Because if you try to fix the root causes, you don't know what each person's root cause is. And so you can't afford to develop a molecule for this root cause and this root cause and this root cause, and you can't make 100 different molecules for the same symptom. You can't afford to do it. So what do the pharmaceutical companies do? They make a molecule that blocks the symptom, because that's all they can afford to do. Now with essential oils, you have hundreds of molecules working on all the different pathways that could be the potential cause in parallel. That's a form of synergy. You have a collective teamwork working together. So you're actually dealing with the root cause, not just the one symptom with essential oils.
You know what I like to do, Doug, is that you can use an oil to fix a symptom without realizing it's going to actually fix the root cause. Like maybe your initial thought is I just want to get rid of this thing that I'm dealing with. And then you accidentally fix the root cause, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that can happen. Yeah, for sure. So, with the drug companies, they can only go after one target because that's all they can afford to do. So they're going to go after the symptom. So think of your car. If the oil light goes off in your car, the red oil light on the engine, it's just saying, what's happening there? Why is the oil light going off? Is it because I have low oil? Is my oil pressure pump not working? Is the sensor not working? There's a leak in my engine. Oh, there's lots of causes that would be causing that oil light, right? So what the pharmaceutical company does says, well, we can't fix your car problem. We're just going to cut the wire that makes your oil light up.
Right.
And so you're driving your car and you don't think there's a problem with it now because the oil light's off. But there really is a problem. You know, you're going to keep driving that car and the engine's going to seize up because you don't have enough oil in it eventually. So that's like our body. So if you just deal with the symptom and you keep running, you go, oh, I feel better. The pain's gone because I took the medicine, but the underlying root cause is still there. And you're eventually, you know, you live your life, and then 20 years later, you're dealing with something like cancer or something else. So,
Yeah, I love that analogy, Doug. It's a really powerful analogy. If we just cut off the body's alarm system, then how do you know that you need to be alarmed? Like, it's telling us for a reason you need to be alarmed about something, need to go fix the problem. Yes. Okay, so the next question is,
well, let's say one more thing though. If you think about it, if medicine cures disease, then why, when doctors prescribe a medicine, unless it's like a bacterial infection like an antibiotic, but let's say, you know, it's for arthritis, if it's for whatever, why do they have to stay on the drug their entire life? Like, you don't ever hear people coming off their blood pressure medicine. You don't hear people coming off their arthritis medicine. You don't, once you get on a drug for chronic issues, you're on that drug the rest of your life. If it was fixing the root cause of the problem, then why are people still taking it the rest of their whole life?
Absolutely. I would argue that even with antibiotics, it's the same thing. It's not that you stay, well, sometimes they try to keep you on them, but it's more that you take the antibiotic for the bacterial issue, then you kill all your good bacteria. So then you get an overgrowth of bad bacteria again, and then you need the antibiotic again to kill the bad bacteria. So it's this horrible, vicious cycle that they just again and again. Okay, so are you okay to move on to the next question?
Sure.
I don't think we're going to get through them all, actually. I'm gonna skip some. All right. So why should I buy a Young Living essential oil when I can get a 100% pure essential oil at a store for a lower price? What makes Young Living different and superior than all other oils?
Okay, so first off, I would say Young Living's been doing essential oils longer than anybody. Gary Young's the one that brought essential oils over to North America and started the whole essential oil craze, if you will. It started with him and with Young Living. And so they have the most knowledge around how to make essential oils and how to measure their quality. Nobody else has the same level of experience with that. And it's very important because, like I said, essential oil is a complex mixture of 200 different components. The amount and ratio of those components depends on everything from how you grow the plant, where you grow the plant, how you fertilize, you know, how you harvest the plant, what time of year you harvest the plant, how you distill the plant, time pressure that you used in the distillation, what type of distillation equipment you use, the geometry of the distillation equipment, and the time you use to distill, and then all of the testing that goes on after that. So there's a lot of different test methods you have to be familiar with to be able to test the oil for its quality and for its safety. And so Young Living has mastered all of those tests and has an active lab where they run these tests on every single batch of oil. I go over all those tests in my other book, this purple one called Innovation. I run through how all those tests work, why they use those tests. You have GCMS, you have IRMS, you have HPLC, you have what else? So there's about 14 different tests that they use on the oils. And I explain them all and how those tests work. And so getting the ratio of those constituents is important, and making sure each constituent is there because of the synergy that needs to take place. There's a lot of times where you can have all the molecules present but missing one, and the oil won't function properly because of synergy. So if you think of the analogy I use is a a door. So if you have a door and you're trying to go through a door, you know, you need a key to get through the door and you have to open the door, right? So let's say you're an essential oil constituent and on the other side of the door, there's something you need to interact with, say, you know, a person. So you have to get through the door to interact with this person on the other side. And so let's say you're the essential oil that can interact with the person, the constituent, but you can't open the door. You can just interact with the person once you get through the door. So, but now comes a second constituent that has a key to open the door, opens the door and lets the other constituent through to get to the person. So the essential oil that had the key to open the door, it can't interact with the person. It can only open the door. And the essential oil constituent that interacts with the person can't open the door. So the two have to work together to have the effect, right? So in most essential oils, you'll find there's a major constituent and there's a minor constituent. And you think of they're in like 0.3%, 0.1% of the oil is this one little trace component. You might think it's not important, but it's the key that opens the door. And without opening the door, the major constituent that's in more proportion in the oil can't go and do what it's supposed to do because the minor constituent's not there. There's lots of examples that I go over of that, you know, specific examples of where those minor constituents play a role in the science. And so if you use somebody else's oil, they're not, I can guarantee you're not measuring those minor constituents. They don't have the chemical libraries and the expertise to measure them. They're not easy to measure. You can only measure them with special techniques and special equipment. And Young Living has the libraries, they have the equipment, they have expertise to measure those constituents. So they've been doing it over 25 years, and they've trained with the best scientists and chemists from France, the AFNOR organization over in Europe, and what's his name, Casablanca. They all work together with Gary and making sure the right procedures were in place to measure the oil. So with the oil on a store shelf that says 100% natural, one of the biggest problems in the essential oil industry, and there's publications on this, research literature, you can go look it up in PubMed, just type in adulteration essential oil. There's lots of research articles about one of the biggest problems in the essential oil industry is adulteration. What they do is they try to adulterate the oil, meaning they're adding other things to the oil to try to make it cheaper. And so they'll add either synthetic ingredients, synthetically synthesized molecule, or they'll use like derived from petroleum, or they'll use a cheaper oil to blend in with a more expensive oil to make it cheaper. That's another form of adulteration. There may be solvents in there. One of the biggest problems in the essential oil industry is the concentration of plasticizers and pesticides. So essential oils will have pesticides in them and plasticizers that are concentrated because they're being distilled. And when you distill the plant material, it'll concentrate the pesticides into the oil. And the pesticide levels are much higher than what's allowed by law in food ingredients. And so there's a lot of research on that as well. Young Living doesn't use pesticides on their farms. They own their own farms. Yes, they do buy oils from other suppliers, but they make sure that those suppliers use their processes for quality and safety of the oils, and they audit all of that, and then they test every batch. So I don't think there's anybody out there that can do what Young Living can do. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the quality control systems in place. I think if you're buying something off the shelf that says 100% natural, you really don't know what you're getting.
Yeah, I agree. So you said you were using the analogy of the lock and the key and the door and the communication with the person on the other side. So I think this next question is that's a good segue into the mindset for the next question about introducing essential oils into supplements and how they increase the bioavailability of Young Living supplements.
Yeah, so there's actually research you can go look up in PubMed on essential oils improving the bioavailability of different compounds, whether it be amino acids or vitamins or even drug compounds. So this is a typical approach that many pharmaceutical companies are using to improve the bioavailability of different drugs using essential oils. This is active research that's happening. So it's not something that's not been researched or validated through science. So yes, essential oils can improve the bioavailability of other molecules, biomolecules, and there's 7 different theories of why that can happen or how it's happening. They don't know exactly the mechanism, but the theories range anywhere from increased thermogenesis in the intestinal tract to increase the absorption of molecules, to blocking of certain efflux pumps in your intestines that basically once they absorb molecules, they spit them back out into your intestines. They're called efflux pumps. So they think the essential oils block those. And so there's a whole host of different mechanisms that they believe, but the science is there that essential oils do increase the bioavailability of different nutrients
So
and
that
biomolecules.
yeah, no, thank you. This leads me to one of the other questions I think is a good next question is about how do oils, essential oils, affect the microbiome?
So in a good way, and this is another mystery about essential oils. So you hear about good bacteria and bad bacteria, and the microbiome has good and has bad. There's like 1,000 different species of bacteria in our microbiome in our intestine. 1,000. And the research that's been done with how the effects of the oils affect the microbiome really come from animals and was funded by DuPont and Danisco, big bio-ag companies that make the feed for animals. And they were looking for ways to improve the health of the animals that are eating the feed because they're introducing antibiotics into the feed to try to deal with Clostridium and Salmonella and chickens and all of these things. They're trying to reduce the amount of bacteria in that chickens or other animals, pigs, are exposed to and make them healthier. And so there's a huge research program funded by these big bioag companies, and they came to the conclusion that essential oils, and if I remember correctly, it was mainly thyme and oregano and cinnamon that they found out had a good synergy that basically kills the bad bacteria and increases the level of the good bacteria. So somehow, some way, essential oils do have this ability to differentiate what is good bacteria from bad bacteria, where most antibiotics that we take from medical, from pharmaceutical companies, they do not have that capability to differentiate between what could be good and bad. But essential oils seem to have this ability to do that. And so they're introducing the oils into the feed of the animals to increase the microbiome health so that they have less disease. And it's also enhancing the amount of nutrients that the animals are getting through the use of the oils. I go over all of this data and the science and the papers that were published in one of my classes. It's in my healthy microbiome class. So if you go to my website, which is starfishsense.com, I have a class called the Healthy Microbiome, and I have a whole module where I go over the science that was done to understand how the essential oils can basically increase the ratio of good to bad bacteria in the microbiome.
Okay, Doug, this is we'll see if we can get a couple more questions in, but this, again, I've reordered these and your lead-ins have been perfect. So you use the animal studies. And the next question is, are oils safe for our animals? And I'll just add in, and our babies at the same time, because we're trying to squeeze everything in this class.
Yeah, so there's different schools of thought and in the community on safety of essential oils. So the person that probably knows the most about safety of essential oils is a guy named Robert Tisserand. And he's published a book called Safety of Essential Oil Safety. It's about 800 pages long. I have the book. Um, and one thing I'll say, in most of the safety studies that they've done on oils, they're looking at individual constituents. Remember, I said an oil is a blend of like 200 or 300 constituents. So let's say, citrus oil has limonene. That's one of the constituents. Well, when they do a safety study, they'll look at limonene itself, isolated, purified limonene, or citral, or myrcene, or whatever it is, linalool, or linolyl acetate, or so they'll look at an individual constituent. In one of my classes called Synergy, I go over this process called quenching, where one molecule can have a negative effect if it's by itself, but if there's another molecule present, it can actually quench the negative effects of that molecule. So that's a negative sort of synergy between molecules that can take place, and it happens with essential oils, where you can have a constituent that would be toxic in mice. If you use it at high level, isolated, purified in mice, it may cause a tumor, right? But when you use it in the blend of an oil with the other constituents at normal concentrations, it's not an issue. So that's one of the issues you got to take into account. A lot of the fear around the safety of oils comes from these studies where we're looking at individual constituents, and then that gets blown out of proportion.
Can
If
I
you
ask
read,
you, so Doug, if you're looking at an individual constituent, wouldn't you have to be using something synthetic? Because a real plant oil is always going to have multiple constituents, right?
so real plant oil will have multiple constituents, but then there's methods you can use. Like you can get a natural, say, lavender oil, and then you can use chromatography, a process of chromatography, to separate out all the constituents. You're not modifying the constituents,
Got
you're
it.
just purifying it from the natural source
Could it
and
be like
isolating
but that
it.
doesn't have to be in gas form to keep it separated? Because like once it gets liquid again, don't they recombine?
You can do chromatography in the liquid phase. It's called liquid chromatography.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's ways you can separate out, but a lot of these studies, you're right too. They might look at limonene. It will be a synthetic form of limonene from
Mhm.
petroleum,
Right.
or from they might synthesize it from like pine oil. So they'll take pine trees and get the pinene out of it, and then they can go through a process of called pyrolysis, and they can derive 20 or 30 different constituents just from that one pine molecule using that process. Those are going to be contaminated with other. There's no way to get 100% pure, so once you do a synthetic like that, it's going to be contaminated with other things that carry over from the reaction. So you're never really testing the pure molecule. But in any event, these safety studies are really just around one constituent, not the full blend or the oil, which makes a huge difference. And usually they're at quantities that are way above what humans would use. If you look at drugs that people take, you go to the drug cabinet, you take ibuprofen, you take Robitussin. People that drink that stuff all day long don't think twice about it. But those molecules are much more potent in terms of their safety profile, negative safety, than any essential oil is. Orders of magnitude. That's why you can only take small amounts. That's why you can overdose on a bottle of most drugs. You can't do that with an oil. I'm not saying that there's not safety things you have to worry about with oils. You can't just drink a 5 milliliter bottle of oil. That's probably not going to go well for you. The oil has to go through your hepatic portal vein from your intestines into your liver. That's the first place oils go once you ingest them, is into your liver. And then all the liver enzymes have to deal with those molecules before they enter into your systemic circulation. So you could put a huge um, uh, stress, I guess is the word I'm looking for, stress on your liver enzymes by ingesting too many oils too quickly. So that's something to consider. Now with animals, I have a whole class called Essential Oils and Pets, where I go over the safety of oils with pets. There's some things you got to consider there. With cats, they have there's certain enzymes their livers don't make, or they make the enzymes in lower quantities than humans do, so they don't metabolize oils as fast as a human. But what we found, we have cats in our home, we diffuse oils all around. never had an issue with cats. If a cat it doesn't like something, it's going to leave the room. But our cats don't seem to be bothered by it. There's dogs don't have that same problem. Um, with vets, there's a whole holistic vet association, vets that use natural methods on animals like horses, dogs. There's hundreds of vets across the country as part of this holistic vet association. And they published a paper. Uh, Somebody did a dissertation on it and published, went around, interviewed all of them. What essential oils are you using with animals? What do you use them for? So I made a whole table of all the different oils that are being used for pets by vets treating animals with essential oils and what specific conditions they're using them for. It's in my pets class if you want to go look at it. But there's a lot of research being done with oils in pets. Vets use it to treat them. If you think about it this way, if essential oils were really that dangerous to pets, and you have 6 million people in young living alone using oils in their homes, wouldn't we be hearing about pets dying, everywhere if it was really that dangerous? And so I think somehow people have gotten really, really scared around that, and it's created blogs and all this stuff around it and got everybody in hysteria. That doesn't mean there's no safety thing. Like I wouldn't put a bowl down for my dog and say, here, instead of water, I want you to drink these essential oils. Like I wouldn't do that. But you can use essential oils with your pets and diluting them and getting them the right ratio.
And
Again, too much of a good thing is not good.
Just real fast. Does the quality of the oil matter when it comes to the safety for the animal?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So if you don't know the source of your oil, you have to assume it's contaminated with heavy metals. It's contaminated with pesticides and plasticizers, and it's probably contaminated with some kind of solvent. The solvent would probably be the most dangerous thing of the oil. And the heavy metals could be a longer range health problem. So you're not going to see them, the first time you use it on your pet. But, heavy metals accumulate in the body, so do pesticides, and so do plasticizers. Plasticizers and pesticides reside in the fat tissue. They go right to the fat tissue and they stay there. They'll accumulate in the body. And so there'll be be a long-term chronic toxicity problem that you'll have with an oil of unknown source, unknown quality. With young living oils, they're not using pesticides on the farms. They're not allowed. They do testing for heavy metals. There's no heavy metals in their oils. They don't use plastic distillation. Not allowed to use plastic, so there's no plasticizers. And so all of those things are going to be absent from the oil, and so you don't have to worry. And then they don't adulterate, so there's no solvents either in their oils. So those are all the things you'd want to consider when you're using oils with your pets.
I love it. Thank you so much, Doug. So we are at the top.
And your children. I know you asked about children too. So do you want me to go into that, or are we out of time?
I think we're out of time, but I think we can,
Okay.
we'll wrap it up in just saying, it seems to me that the quality and the purity is key when it comes to safety and efficacy, right? And that we can use oils to help with all the things that might have been contaminated in our lives to help heal our bodies from all of those things that you were just mentioning. I mean, we know that oils have been used for heavy metal detox. Oils have been used to help clean our livers, etc. So it's just amazing that we can use good oils to do all the things that we're worried about that are results from bad products.
Yeah. If anyone wants to learn more really into science, I have a memory stick that has all of my classes on it. It has like 15 different classes from pets to microbiome to how do they work, to vitamins and minerals. I have 15 different classes. They all have multiple modules. Comes with all the videos of me teaching, all the slides. So if you go to starfishsense.com, you can just say, it says all of Dr. Doug's classes. It also has all my recipes on there. So I have different blends and recipes that I have digitally on here as well. And it's 20% off if you want to get it for, today. So
Amazing. Thank you so much for all of your time. I'm going to
thank you
stop
for